People think betrayal always announces itself loudly. It doesn't. Sometimes it waits quietly at the dinner table, passes the bread, smiles politely, and laughs at the wrong moment. That night was supposed to be simple. A family dinner, nothing more. Jard's parents sat at the head of the table like they always did, comfortable in a house that felt more theirs than mine. His father spoke little, his mother smiled too much. His sister Daisy sat across from me, legs crossed, wine glass already half empty. Everyone else filled the space with small talk that meant nothing. And then there was me. Olivia, wife, mother, outsider. Our baby slept upstairs, unaware that his existence was about to be questioned by the very people who shared his blood. I had spent days preparing for this dinner. Not because I loved hosting, but because I was still trying to earn something that never seemed to come easily: acceptance. The food was perfect, the table was set, nothing looked out of place. Nothing except the way Daisy looked at me. She waited, I could see it. She always did. Daisy never struck randomly, she aimed. The comment came casually, wrapped in a laugh, delivered like it was harmless. "Too bad your baby looks nothing like your husband." The words landed harder than any shout ever could. Silence followed, not shock, not outrage, just quiet interest. I turned to Jard. "My husband." I waited for him to speak, to shut it down, to defend me, to defend our son. Instead, he laughed. A short, awkward laugh, like he was trying to blend in. "Maybe she has a secret," he said. That was the moment something broke. Not loudly. Cleanly. Everyone laughed after that. His mother hid a smile behind her napkin. His father shook his head like it was all in good fun. Daisy leaned back, satisfied. I didn't say a word. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't leave. I smiled. Because what they didn't know, what none of them could see, was that this joke wasn't new to me. It had been whispered before, in quiet moments, in side glances, in questions that never sounded like accusations but always were. And I had stopped defending myself a long time ago. I stood up calmly, pushed my chair in, and walked out of the room. Behind me, confusion replaced laughter. They thought I was upset. They thought I was retreating. They were wrong. Upstairs in my bedroom, hidden where no one ever looked, was a plain white envelope. No name, no label, just paper sealed with truth. I had carried it for months, waiting. Not for courage. For timing. And downstairs at that table, surrounded by people who thought they had all the power, the timing had finally arrived. I picked up the envelope. And when I walked back into that dining room, no one was laughing anymore. The silence after I left the room didn't last long. Laughter slowly crept back in, softer this time, unsure of itself. Someone cleared their throat. Someone reached for a glass. The moment passed the way uncomfortable moments usually do, ignored until it felt safe again. I stood in the hallway for a few seconds before going upstairs. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Inside the bedroom, everything looked normal. Too normal. The bed was neatly made. My phone lay face down on the dresser. Nothing showed that something irreversible had just happened downstairs. But I knew. Jard's laugh still echoed in my head. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel. That was the worst part. It was easy. Like laughing was the natural response. Like doubting me had become normal. That laugh wasn't for Daisy. It wasn't for his parents. It was for himself, a way to stay comfortable, a way to avoid choosing sides. And he had chosen. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. My mind didn't race, it slowed. Clear thoughts replaced panic. This wasn't the first time. I remembered Jard standing by the crib weeks ago, staring too long. I remembered him asking questions that didn't need answers. I remembered how he stopped correcting people when they joked about how different our baby looked. I remembered how he never said, "He's mine." Downstairs, someone called my name. Olivia. I didn't answer. Because I finally understood something I hadn't wanted to admit before. This wasn't about Daisy's mouth. This wasn't about family jokes. This was about permission. Jard had given them permission to doubt me. I opened my jewelry box and moved aside the necklace he gave me last year. Under it sat the envelope, untouched, exactly where I left it. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The truth inside it had already changed me. When I walked back downstairs, everyone looked up at once. They expected tears, anger, drama. I gave them none of it. I walked straight to Jard. He avoided my eyes. That told me everything. I placed the envelope in front of him and rested my hand on the table. "Since we're sharing jokes," I said calmly, "you should open this." The room froze. Daisy leaned forward, his mother frowned, his father stopped chewing. Jard looked at the envelope like it might bite him. "What is this?" he asked. I didn't answer. I stepped back. For the first time all night, he looked nervous. And for the first time in months, I felt in control. "Go on," I said, "open it." His fingers trembled as he reached for the envelope. And before he even broke the seal, I knew something else with complete certainty. Whatever happened next, there was no going back. Jard slid his finger under the flap. The sound was small, paper against paper. But in that room, it felt loud. He pulled out the document slowly, like delaying it might change what it said. His eyes dropped to the page. At first, nothing registered. His face stayed neutral, almost bored. Then he read the header. Something shifted. He read the first line again, then the next. His jaw tightened. The color drained from his face so fast it was impossible to miss. Daisy noticed first. "What is it?" she asked, leaning forward. Jard didn't answer. He stared at the paper like it was written in a language he didn't understand, even though the words were simple. Clear, final. His grip tightened until the page bent. His mother's smile faded. His father set his fork down. "Jard," his mother said. Still nothing. I watched him carefully. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't shock. This was fear. He swallowed hard and looked up at me just for a second. His eyes searched my face, not for answers, for mercy. I gave him neither. "What does it say?" Daisy pressed, irritation creeping into her voice. I spoke before he could. "It says our son is his," I said, without doubt. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Jard's hand began to shake. He dropped the paper onto the table like it burned him. His father leaned forward and read it himself, his brows pulled together. His mother covered her mouth. Daisy laughed once, sharp, nervous. "Oh, come on," she said. "This is dramatic. You actually did a test." I looked at her, really looked. "Yes," I said, because I was tired of being quietly accused. Jard finally found his voice. "Olivia, I raised my hand." "No." The word stopped him instantly. "You don't get to explain yet," I said. "You've been speaking for months, just not out loud." His mother turned to him slowly. "Jard," she said, "have you been questioning this?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. His father's face hardened. "You let this turn into a joke." Jard looked down. The room changed then, not loudly, not suddenly, but everyone felt it. The laughter from earlier felt distant now, embarrassing, dangerous. Daisy crossed her arms. "This is being blown out of proportion." I stepped closer to the table. "No," I said, "what happened earlier was proportion. This is consequence." Jard's breathing was uneven. "I never meant for it to happen like this." "But it did," I said, "and you laughed." That hit him harder than the paper. He looked up again, eyes wet now. "I was trying to keep things light." "You were trying to belong," I said, "and you chose them over us." No one interrupted this time. The truth sat there, open on the table, impossible to joke about now. Upstairs, our baby stirred in his sleep. Downstairs, his father was learning what it cost to doubt him. And this was only the beginning. No one spoke for a long moment. The paper lay between us like evidence at a trial. No one dared touch it again. Jard stared at the table, his hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The man who had laughed minutes ago now looked trapped by his own silence. His father spoke first. "How long?" he asked. Jard didn't look up. "I don't know." "That's not an answer," his father said. Jard exhaled slowly, since he was born. His mother inhaled sharply. Daisy stopped smiling. I watched each reaction carefully. This was the moment when denial usually shows up, when people defend themselves by pretending nothing was wrong. No one did. "Why didn't you say anything?" his mother asked. Jared's voice cracked, because I didn't want to be wrong. I almost laughed. Instead, I spoke quietly. "You were wrong every day you stayed silent." He finally looked at me then. "I didn't accuse you." "Yes, you did," I said, "just not with words." Daisy shifted in her chair. "This is insane. You're acting like he committed a crime." I turned to her. "You made it public." She scoffed. "It was a joke." "A joke only works if everyone's laughing," I said. I wasn't. She opened her mouth again, but his father cut in. "That's enough." The room froze. He looked directly at Daisy. "You crossed a line." Her face flushed. "I didn't know." "You knew exactly what you were doing," I said. "You just didn't expect proof." Jared stood up suddenly, his chair scraping the floor. "Stop," he said. "This is my fault." I watched him carefully, then own it. He swallowed. "I let doubt grow. I didn't protect my family." The word family sounded new in his mouth. His mother looked at me with something close to shame. "Why didn't you tell us?" I answered honestly. "Because I wanted to see who you would believe without evidence." No one liked that answer. "Good." Daisy stood up. "This whole thing is humiliating." "Yes," I said, "it is." She stared at me, searching for something: weakness, anger, regret. She found none. Jared rubbed his face. "What do you want from me?" The question hung in the air. Not forgiveness. Not apologies. Something else. I picked up the paper, folded it once, and slid it back into the envelope. "I wanted you to hear your doubt out loud," I said, "so you'd never pretend it didn't exist." Upstairs, the baby cried softly. Jared flinched. I turned toward the stairs. "I'm going to check on our son," I said. "You can decide what kind of father you're going to be." No one stopped me. Behind me, I heard Daisy say something sharp. Behind that, silence. And in that silence, something had already changed. I didn't go upstairs right away. I paused on the steps, listening. No one followed me. No one called my name. The silence behind me felt heavier than shouting ever could. That silence told me everything I needed to know. When I reached the nursery, our son was awake but calm. I picked him up and held him close. He didn't know what had happened. He trusted easily. That made everything sharper. Downstairs, voices started again. Low, controlled, no laughter this time. I stayed where I was. Minutes passed. Then I heard Jared's voice. "I didn't mean to hurt her." His father replied quickly. "Intent doesn't erase damage." I sat in the chair beside the crib, rocking slowly. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't angry either. That scared me more than rage ever had. Anger fades. Clarity doesn't. Footsteps approached the stairs, then stopped. "Olivia," Jared called. I didn't answer. I waited. He tried again. "Please." I stepped into the hallway so he could see me, but I didn't come down. "What now?" he asked. "That depends on you," I said. He ran a hand through his hair. "I never cheated. I never accused you out loud." "You let others do it for you," I replied. "That's worse." He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to argue. "Are you leaving?" he asked. The question was quiet, afraid. "I'm thinking," I said. That was the truth. Behind him, his mother watched us from the dining room. She looked uncomfortable, like she'd just realized she'd been standing on the wrong side of something important. Daisy was gone. She hadn't said goodbye. Good. Jared took a step closer. I was scared. "I know," I said. "You just chose the wrong thing to protect." He nodded slowly. I went back into the nursery and closed the door. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was upset, but because my mind kept replaying everything that had been said and everything that hadn't. By morning, I knew something was over. And something else was about to begin. Morning came without resolution. Jared slept on the couch. I knew because I heard him move when the baby cried. He didn't come upstairs. He didn't knock. That restraint felt new and too late. We moved around each other quietly. No arguments, no apologies. Silence filled every space where comfort used to live. That silence wasn't peaceful. It was observant. I watched him notice things for the first time, how I didn't ask questions, didn't explain routines, didn't fill gaps with reassurance. He looked like a man waiting to be told what to do next. I didn't tell him. Later that afternoon, his parents called. He didn't answer. Neither did I. By evening, he finally spoke. "What happens now?" he asked. I looked at him for a long moment. Now, I stopped guessing. He frowned. "Guessing what?" "Everything," I said. "You, us, this marriage." He nodded slowly, like he expected it. "I need space," I continued. "Not distance, clarity." He swallowed. "Are you taking the baby?" "Yes." That was the moment fear reached his eyes. "When?" he asked. "Tomorrow." He didn't argue, he couldn't. That night I packed quietly, not everything, just what mattered. Jard watched from the doorway, saying nothing. Any word would have sounded wrong. Before I zipped the bag, I placed the envelope inside. Not for proof anymore. For reminder. At dawn, I kissed my son's forehead, picked up the bag, and walked past Jard without stopping. He didn't try to block the door. That told me more than any apology ever could. Outside, the air felt different. Lighter. And as I drove away, one thought stayed clear in my mind. I wasn't running. I was choosing. My sister didn't ask questions when I arrived. She saw my face, took the bag from my hand, and nodded once. That was enough. Days passed without noise. No family dinners, no jokes, no pretending. Jard called, then texted, then stopped. Silence again. But this silence was different. It felt deliberate, measured. On the fourth night, I took the envelope out. I hadn't opened it since the dinner. I didn't need to. But this time, I read every word slowly, like I was memorizing something important. Not the result. The dates. The signatures. The fact that I had done this alone. That thought stayed with me longer than the rest. Late that night, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You embarrassed him on purpose." I stared at the screen. Then another message came. "You planned it, don't pretend you didn't." I didn't reply. A minute later, a third message. "You think this is over." I knew who it was. Daisy. I blocked the number. The next morning, Jard showed up. He didn't knock. He stood outside until I opened the door myself. He looked worse, tired, smaller. "I need to talk," he said. "Talk," I replied, stepping aside. He sat across from me, hands folded like he was waiting for judgment. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything." "So have I." He nodded. I was wrong. "I know." He looked surprised. "That's it." "You don't get credit for noticing," I said. He inhaled slowly. "What do you want?" The question again. This time, I had an answer. "I want the truth," I said. "All of it, no filters, no protection." He hesitated. That hesitation told me the truth existed. "What aren't you saying?" I asked. He looked down. "There were people talking," he said quietly. "Who?" "My sister, my cousin, even my mother sometimes." I felt something tighten in my chest. "And you?" I asked. I listened. That was worse than doubt. That meant agreement. I stood up. "This conversation is over," I said. He looked up fast. "Wait." "No," I replied. "You already waited months. Now it's my turn." As he left, I realized something unsettling. The envelope hadn't ended the story. It had only exposed where it truly began. That night, after Jard left, I couldn't sleep. Not because of him. Because of what he admitted. He hadn't been alone in his doubt. It wasn't just fear, it was influence. Quiet voices, repeated questions, seeds planted carefully over time. That meant this wasn't accidental. It was shaped. The next morning, while my son slept, I opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for at first. I just knew I needed to stop trusting that I already knew everything. I logged into the shared email account Jard rarely used anymore. It didn't take long. There were messages he never deleted, conversations he assumed I'd never read. Daisy's name appeared again and again. Not direct accusations, worse. He doesn't look like you. People notice things. You should protect yourself. One message made my hands go cold. If it turns out he isn't yours, don't let her ruin you. The date was 4 months after the birth. I closed the laptop slowly. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was preparation. My phone buzzed again. A new message, unknown number. You think blocking me ends this? I didn't respond. Instead, I took a screenshot of the email. Then another. And another. By the time my son woke up, I had a folder saved, labeled, organized. Proof again. But this time, it wasn't about biology. It was about intent. That evening, Jard texted. Can we meet tomorrow? I replied. Yes, at the house. He responded immediately. Thank you. I stared at the screen. He still thought this was reconciliation. He didn't understand yet. This meeting wasn't about saving anything. It was about exposing everything. I placed the envelope and the printed emails together. Side by side. 2 truths. 2 moments. 1 ending. And when I turned off the light, I knew something with certainty. Tomorrow, Jard wouldn't just lose his doubt. He would lose his excuses. I arrived at the house before Jard. That was intentional. I needed to see it empty, quiet, neutral, a place without voices shaping the air. Nothing had changed. The furniture was the same. The walls still held photos that now felt misleading. A family frozen in time before doubt entered the frame. I placed the envelope on the table. Next to it, the printed emails. Clean, organized, impossible to deny. When Jard walked in, he stopped the moment he saw them. His face told me everything before he spoke. What's this? He asked. You already know, I said. He didn't sit down. He stood there like someone waiting for bad news they already expected. I pointed to the emails. You let her talk you into this. He exhaled slowly. She didn't force me. No, I agreed. She just guided you. He looked at the papers but didn't touch them. I was confused, he said. You were convinced, I replied. There's a difference. He finally sat down, rubbing his hands together like he was cold. She kept saying things, he admitted. That it was strange, that people were talking, that I'd look foolish if I didn't check. And instead of shutting it down, I said, you watched me carry the weight. He didn't deny it. That silence was louder than any excuse. I didn't want to accuse you, he said. I just wanted to be sure. So you chose doubt over trust, I said, and silence over honesty. He looked up. I made a mistake. I shook my head. You made a pattern. That landed. He stared at the table, then at the envelope. You planned that dinner, he said quietly. Yes, I replied, because it was already public. I just changed who controlled the ending. He swallowed hard. You humiliated me. No, I said, I stopped protecting you. He leaned back in his chair, defeated. Is there anything left to fix? He asked. I considered the question carefully. Then I stood up. That depends on whether you understand what you've lost, I said. He looked confused. I picked up the envelope, then the emails. This isn't proof anymore, I continued. It's a record. I walked toward the door. Behind me, his voice cracked. Where are you going? To decide, I said, without noise this time. And as I left him sitting alone at that table, staring at the evidence of his own choices, I knew the next move would not be his. It would be mine. I didn't go back to my sister's place. I drove. No destination, just movement, silence without witnesses. My phone buzzed once, then again, I ignored it. For the first time since the dinner, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. By the time I stopped, it was dark. I sat in the car and replayed the last few months, not emotionally, strategically. Every comment, every pause, every moment Jard chose comfort over clarity. He hadn't doubted once. He had doubted repeatedly. That was the difference that mattered. When I finally checked my phone, there were no missed calls anymore. Just one message. I understand now. I'll do whatever you ask. I stared at it. That sentence used to mean something to me. Now it sounded like panic. I replied with one line. Tomorrow, one conversation, no interruptions. His response came instantly. Yes. The next morning, I returned to the house. He was already there, standing, waiting. That told me something too. We sat across from each other, no small talk. I'm listening, he said. Good, I replied, because this isn't about forgiveness. He nodded slowly. You didn't just doubt me, I continued. You allowed a narrative where I had to prove my honesty. That changes everything. He opened his mouth. I raised my hand. You don't speak until I'm done. He closed it. I no longer explain myself, I said. I no longer defend what should never have been questioned. If this marriage continues, it does so under conditions you don't control. He swallowed. What conditions? Full transparency, I said. Accounts, messages, decisions, all of it. He nodded quickly, too quickly. And one more thing, I added. He waited. You don't get the benefit of privacy when you used it against me. That landed hard. He leaned back. You don't trust me. No, I said, I understand you. Silence again. Finally, he asked the question he'd been avoiding. And if I can't live with that? I stood up. Then we're already done. I walked toward the door. Behind me, he said my name. I didn't turn around. Because the suspense wasn't whether he would agree. The real suspense was whether he'd realize too late that the power had already shifted, and it wasn't coming back. He didn't follow me out. That was new. I expected footsteps, pleading, another attempt to regain control. None came. I paused at the door anyway, counting silently. 3 seconds, 5, 10. Nothing. I left. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because things were fixed, but because they were finally exposed. The next morning, my phone rang. Not Jard. His mother. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Olivia, she said, her voice careful. We need to talk. We already did, I replied. No, she said, not honestly. I didn't respond. She continued, Jard told us everything. I waited. There are things you should know, she added. That caught my attention. Like what? I asked. A pause. He wasn't the first to suggest a test. My grip tightened. Who was? I asked. Another pause, longer this time. His father, she said quietly. The line went silent. I closed my eyes. So it wasn't just Daisy. It was older, deeper. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because it's already broken, she said, and lies won't fix it. I ended the call without saying goodbye. Minutes later, Jard texted. We need to talk, now. I replied. You should have talked before. He called, I didn't answer. Then another message came. My parents are furious. That made me smile. Not because I wanted revenge. Because consequences had finally started moving on their own. That evening, Jard showed up again. This time, he looked different. Cornered. You spoke to my mother, he said. Yes. She told you things she shouldn't have. She told me the truth, I replied. He exhaled sharply. My father didn't mean it like that. I looked at him. You mean questioning my integrity runs in the family? He flinched. I didn't know how to stop it, he said. You didn't want to, I replied. Silence stretched between us. Then I said the words that changed his expression completely. I'm not fighting you anymore. His eyes widened. What does that mean? It means I've already stepped out of the argument, I said. You're still inside it alone. He stared at me, trying to understand. This wasn't anger. This was detachment. And detachment frightened him more than rage ever could. Because detachment meant I no longer needed him to agree. It meant the ending was no longer a discussion. It was approaching. Quietly, Jard stayed standing. He didn't sit, didn't relax, didn't move closer. Men only do that when they know they're losing ground. I can fix this, he said. I'll talk to them, all of them. You already did, I replied. You just did it too late. He ran a hand over his face. What do you want from me? I want you to understand something, I said, and I don't care if you like it. He nodded slowly. You didn't just doubt me, I continued. You created a version of me in your head that needed proof, and once you did that, you stopped seeing me as your wife. That's not true, he said quickly. It is, I replied. Because when people see their partner as equal, they ask questions out loud. They don't investigate in silence. That landed harder than accusation. He looked away. I felt stupid, he said. Everyone kept saying things, I didn't want to look blind. So you made me the risk instead, I said. He didn't respond. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Do you know when I decided this was over? I asked. He shook his head. Not at the dinner, I said. Not when you laughed. He looked up confused. It was when you didn't look surprised by the envelope. His eyes widened slightly. You were afraid, I continued, but you weren't shocked. That means part of you expected it. He swallowed. That's when I knew, I said. You had already prepared yourself to doubt me. You just didn't expect me to be prepared too. Silence again. Then he said something I hadn't expected. I don't recognize you anymore. I nodded, good. That answer scared him. You're different, he said, colder. No, I replied, clearer. I walked past him toward the door. Where are you going? He asked. To live without explaining myself, I said. You can't just leave like this. I already did, I replied. He stepped into my path for the first time. What about our son? He asked. I stopped. That's the one place you don't get to scare me, I said calmly. I've protected him since the moment you didn't. That was it. He stepped aside. As I walked out, I realized something important. This wasn't about whether he would change. It was about the fact that I already had. And no one ever prepares for that. I didn't make the next move. That bothered him. 2 days passed, no messages, no visits, no explanations. Silence again, the kind that makes people imagine outcomes worse than reality. On the third night, my phone rang. His father. I considered not answering, then I did. Olivia, he said, voice firm, controlled. We need to clear something. Then speak, I replied. There was no apology in his tone, just authority, habitual, used to being obeyed. You've taken this too far, he said. Families have doubts, they handle them privately. I smiled. You didn't handle it privately, I said. You let it become public. I just finished the conversation. You humiliated my son, he snapped. No, I said, I revealed him. Silence on the line. You think you've won, he said slowly. That's your mistake, I replied. This was never a competition. Then what is it? He demanded. I paused deliberately. It's separation, I said, from people who confuse control with concern. His voice hardened. You're tearing this family apart. No, I replied. I stopped holding it together alone. Another pause. Then he said something dangerous. You should think about how this will look. I closed my eyes. There it was. The threat disguised as advice. You should think about why you're afraid of how it looks, I said quietly, because people only fear exposure when they know what's underneath. I ended the call. Minutes later, Jard texted. What did you say to him? I replied. The truth. His response came slower this time. You don't understand what you're doing. I stared at the message. Then typed. I understand exactly what I'm doing. You just don't recognize the rules anymore. No reply. That night, I stood by the window holding my son, watching headlights pass in the distance. Somewhere, Jard was realizing something uncomfortable. The doubt hadn't destroyed me. It had isolated him. And once that realization sets in, panic usually follows. I was waiting for it. It came the next morning. Not loud. Not dramatic. Panic never announces itself, it leaks. I woke up to 12 missed calls. Jard, his mother, an unknown number. I didn't return any of them. Instead, I read the message Jard had sent at 2:17 a.m. Please don't do this, we can fix it. I'll cut them off, I swear. Too late. When people offer sacrifices only after exposure, it isn't loyalty. It's fear. At 9:03 a.m., there was a knock at the door. I didn't open it immediately. I checked through the peephole. Daisy. That surprised me. She looked different, no confidence, no smile, just tight anger held together by pride. I opened the door halfway. What do you want? I asked. You went too far, she said. I almost laughed. You accused me publicly, I replied. I ended it publicly. You planned that, she snapped. You humiliated my brother. You trained him, I said calmly. I exposed him. Her eyes flashed. You think this makes you powerful? No, I replied. It makes me finished. That confused her. I'm done playing the role you needed me in, I continued. The silent one, the forgiving one. She leaned closer. You think Jard will forgive you for this? I met her gaze. Forgiveness isn't my concern anymore. That shook her. You're destroying this family, she said again. I tilted my head. Funny how families only call it destruction when control stops working. Her mouth opened, closed. She had no line left. Stay away from me and my child, I said. That's not a request. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. No last word. No victory speech. That was how I knew she was afraid. An hour later, Jard arrived. This time, he didn't knock. He stood there like someone waiting for permission he no longer had. I need to know what you're planning, he said. I already told you, I replied. I'm stepping out. You're cutting me off, he said. No, I corrected. I'm letting you stand alone in what you created. He ran a hand through his hair, breathing fast. My parents are furious, he said. Daisy isn't speaking to me. I said nothing. You wanted consequences, he continued. Is this enough? I looked at him carefully. No, I said. This is panic, not accountability. That word hit him hard. What else do you want? He asked, voice breaking. I stepped closer. I want you to understand something, I said. You don't get to decide when this ends. He stared at me, realization creeping in. This wasn't negotiation anymore. This was loss. And he was just beginning to feel it. Jard didn't leave right away. He stood there, silent, like if he waited long enough I'd change my mind. Like time itself would soften the damage. It didn't. I'll do anything, he said finally. Say it. I looked at him, really looked. This wasn't strength. This was bargaining. Anything, I asked. He nodded quickly. Then listen, I said, and don't interrupt. He froze. You don't speak for me anymore, I continued. Not to your family, not to friends, not to lawyers, not to anyone. His eyes widened slightly. You don't explain me, you don't defend me, you don't rewrite what happened. I won't, he said immediately. I'm not done, I replied. He closed his mouth. You don't touch my silence, I said. If I don't answer, you wait. If I don't explain, you accept it. He swallowed. And the baby, he asked carefully. That's where the line is, I said. You cross it once and this ends completely. What does that mean? He asked. It means you don't question, I said. You don't investigate, you don't doubt, ever again. I won't, he said. I stepped closer. You already did. That landed. This is not about trust, I continued. Trust is gone, this is about restraint. He nodded slowly, finally understanding the weight of it. I'll prove it, he said. I shook my head. No, you'll live with it. Silence stretched. Then I said the thing he feared most. I'm not coming back yet. His face tightened. How long? I don't know. That's not fair, he said before he could stop himself. I smiled slightly. Neither was doubt. He looked like he wanted to argue. He didn't. That restraint was new. He stepped back toward the door. I'll wait, he said. I nodded once. When he left, I locked the door behind him. Not because I was afraid he'd return, but because I needed a boundary that didn't move. That night, my phone stayed silent. No calls. No messages. Somewhere, Jard was learning something slowly and painfully. Waiting feels very different when you're the one outside the door. Waiting changes people. It didn't change me. It changed what I noticed. With the noise gone, patterns surfaced. I stopped reacting and started observing. Jard followed every rule I set. No calls, no messages, no visits. Weeks passed, too perfect, too careful. That's when I knew something else existed. People don't become obedient overnight unless they're afraid of what might come out next. One afternoon, an email arrived from our bank. Routine alert, account activity. Something felt off. I logged in. There were accounts I hadn't opened, transfers I didn't authorize, nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. Just decisions made quietly, without me. Money moved, investments adjusted, safeguards placed for him. It wasn't theft. It was preparation. My chest tightened, not with panic but recognition. This wasn't about the baby. It never was. This was about control. I printed everything. Statements, dates, signatures. Later that night, I checked the safe. Documents were missing. Not important ones, strategic ones. The kind you move when you think someone might leave. That's when the final shift happened. Not anger. Not fear. Certainty. Jard hadn't just doubted me. He'd planned for the possibility that I'd disappear and prepared to survive it. Alone. My phone buzzed. A message from him. I'm respecting your space, I hope you see that. I stared at the screen. Then typed. I see more than you think. The reply came slowly this time. What does that mean? I didn't answer. Because the next conversation wouldn't be about emotions. It would be about exposure. And once financial truths surface, there's no pretending it was just insecurity. It becomes strategy. And strategy reveals intent. I placed the new documents beside the envelope and emails. 3 piles. 3 truths. And suddenly, the suspense wasn't about whether our marriage would survive. It was about how much of it had ever been real to begin with. I didn't call him. I let the silence do its work. 2 days later, Jard showed up unannounced. That was his first mistake. He stood at the door longer than necessary before knocking, like he was deciding whether to risk it. When I opened the door, his eyes went straight past me, searching the room. He was checking what was gone. What are you doing here? I asked. You said nothing about not coming, he replied carefully. I said I needed space, I said. You decided that didn't apply today. He stepped inside anyway. Second mistake. You've been looking into things, he said. Not a question. I closed the door behind him. Yes. His jaw tightened. You didn't need to. I did, I replied, because I finally stopped assuming. He exhaled slowly. Those accounts aren't what you think. That's interesting, I said, because I haven't told you what I think. He hesitated. There it was. I placed the documents on the table. All 3 piles, the envelope, the emails, the financial records. He stared at them like he was seeing the outline of a trap he'd already stepped into. You prepared for me to leave, I said calmly. I prepared for uncertainty, he replied quickly. You prepared for me to lose, I corrected. He ran a hand through his hair. I was protecting myself. From me, I asked. He didn't answer. That's the problem, I continued. You've been protecting yourself from your own wife. He sat down heavily. I didn't know what else to do. You could have trusted me, I said. That felt risky, he admitted. The words settled between us. Risky. I nodded slowly, and doubting me didn't. He looked up, eyes wide. This isn't fair. No, I agreed. It's accurate. Silence pressed in. You didn't just question our child, I said. You questioned whether I deserved equal ground. That's not. It is, I said firmly. Because you made exit plans without telling me, you kept leverage. He looked away. I leaned forward. Tell me the truth. If the test had gone the other way, what would you have done? He opened his mouth. Closed it. That answer was enough. I stood up. This marriage didn't crack at the dinner, I said. It cracked when you started planning a future without my consent. He looked at me like he was finally seeing the damage in full. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. I picked up the documents and placed them back into their folders. "Now," I said, "you live with what you built." And for the first time since this began, he looked afraid, not of losing me, but of being fully known. That fear told me everything I needed to know. He didn't try to stop me this time. That told me he finally understood the balance had shifted beyond recovery. A week later, the invitation went out. Not from me. From him. A small gathering, family, close friends, nothing dramatic on paper. But he asked first. That mattered. I agreed. When the day came, I arrived with our son and nothing else. No envelope, no documents, no warnings. They were already there when I walked in. His parents, his cousin, a few people who had heard pieces of the story but not the whole thing. Conversations slowed when they saw me. Smiles stiffened. Eyes followed. Jared stood near the center of the room. Waiting. He didn't touch me, didn't reach for the baby. He knew better now. When everyone was settled, he spoke. No speech, no build-up. "I owe an explanation," he said. Silence spread fast. "I questioned my wife," he continued. "Privately, repeatedly, I allowed others to do the same." No one interrupted him. "I didn't protect my family," he said. "I protected myself." His father shifted uncomfortably. His mother stared at the floor. "I prepared for failure instead of preventing it," Jared went on. "And when the truth was handed to me, I didn't lose my doubt, I lost my authority." That word landed hard. Authority. "I won't ask for forgiveness," he said, "because that would be another demand. This is accountability." He looked directly at me then. "I broke what trust looks like," he said, "and I don't get to decide what replaces it." No applause, no comfort. Just silence. That silence was different from the one at the dinner. This one didn't carry judgment. It carried understanding. People shifted, some looked embarrassed, some looked relieved, no one laughed. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Because the moment wasn't about me proving anything anymore. It was about him being seen without protection. And as the gathering slowly resumed, I realized something quietly powerful. The story had changed owners. It no longer belonged to whispers, jokes, or doubt. It belonged to fact. And that kind of truth doesn't need defending. It just stands there. Waiting. After that night, no one called to check in. No messages asking how I was holding up. No careful apologies wrapped in concern. Because there was nothing left to ask. People only circle when they think something is still unstable. What Jared did made everything final. Uncomfortable, but final. Daisy didn't come. No explanation, no excuse. She disappeared quietly, the way people do when their influence stops working. I heard later that she'd told someone the whole situation was handled poorly. That was her version of retreat. Jared didn't contact me for days. When he finally did, it wasn't to negotiate. It was to inform. "I'm moving out," he said on the phone. "Not because you asked, because it's necessary." I said nothing. "I'll still see our son," he added quickly, "on your terms." That mattered more than the sentence itself. "Okay," I said. There was relief in his silence, not happiness, relief. We weren't fighting anymore. We weren't fixing anything either. Something else had replaced both. Distance with clarity. Life adjusted faster than I expected. No tension walking into rooms. No watching expressions. No decoding tone. I made decisions without explaining them. That felt unfamiliar, powerful. One afternoon, I found the envelope again while unpacking a box I hadn't opened since leaving the house. I stared at it for a long time. Then I threw it away. Not because it didn't matter anymore. Because it had already done its job. That proof had never been about convincing others. It had been about stopping myself from doubting what I already knew. Weeks later, I ran into Jared by accident, neutral space, no warning. He looked different. Quieter, less certain, less guarded. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm steady," I replied. He nodded, accepting that answer without pushing for more. That's good, he said. And for the first time, it didn't sound like something he needed to hear. It sounded like something he respected. As we parted ways, I realized something subtle but important. The suspense was gone. Not because everything was resolved, but because nothing was hidden anymore. And when nothing is hidden, control loses its grip. That was the real ending. Not closure. Not revenge. Just truth standing where silence used to live. You have reached the end of the text.